Well, hello, everyone. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to Center Court. We have three folks here involved in MBA admissions. We're going to shed some light on the admissions processes at their schools, who's going now, what that looks like, what it takes to get in, and what you can expect once you hit campus. So let me introduce each and every one of our panelists. Really happy to see them today. We have from Carnegie Mellon's Tepper School of Business, Jackie Otto, who's Associate Director of Master's Admissions. We have Eric Askins, who's Executive Director of Full-Time MBA Admissions at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business. Not too far away from where I am right now in California. And we have at the University of Illinois, the Gies College of Business, Casey Jones, Associate Director of Recruitment and Admissions. Casey was with me yesterday, actually on our careers panel. So welcome to all of you. Jackie, I wonder if you can give us a little sense of what the incoming class looks like, what trends you saw in the pool, and ultimately what kind of class you crafted for what will ultimately be the class of 2023.
Yes, it has been an exciting summer welcoming our incoming students. We've worked really hard at the Tepper School through all of our application rounds and had a dramatic increase in applications. It felt at times that the process might never end, but we're here and we've welcomed our students, and we're very excited to have one of the largest classes we've had in recent history for the full-time MBA program. So encountering the pandemic incoming class, certainly was a smaller group for us, but happy to have such a large group of students here from over 29 different countries all over the world, and some places that we haven't had candidates before, which is really exciting. So yeah, we're here. There's the energy and activity, like you've mentioned in our conversation before the panel. The students are here. I'm meeting some of our second years for the first time, and I've got to know them from the waist up, but now here in the flesh with mask on, of course, I've been able to meet some of our second years and first year students. But it's a big group that we're here, and we're expecting with the application volume we've just seen. We had our round one deadline on Sunday. We're still going to be very busy, and we have a lean team, but are processing a lot of applications already, and look forward to getting to know more of our incoming students for next year.
Good to hear. Did you experience a rebound in international applicants? Because, of course, the pandemic made it very difficult for many international admits to come due to travel restrictions and visa problems.
Yeah, there were quite a few deferrals that came in this year, and it'll be interesting to see how things happen for the next year, if there is a pent-up need or desire for the MBA from the international community across all of the programs. So in terms of representation, it's a similar number that we've had before, a little bit higher, but I think some of that is from deferral students that weren't able to make it, that we did have some that started last year. So we're excited to have more diversity in some of those countries that are represented this year.
Great. And Eric, I know you had an incredible pool of applicants, and two numbers tell us the story. Your applications are up by 4%, yet you admitted nearly 200 fewer people, which just shows you the quality of the pool and also your expectations on better yield.
Absolutely, John. And what I can say about those two numbers is that they don't quite tell the whole story, but they do.
No, not at all.
But they do give us a lead in, right? So what does our class look like this year? So we, I guess, a little bit in the reverse of what's happened over at Tepper. We actually had a very large class in our, I guess, what you call the pandemic year. Part of the reason that we did that is we had the ability to receive more students into our community because we were starting remotely. And we tend to be facilities constrained here at Haas. We are built to be about a 300-person each year program. That's by design. We believe that there's a lot of value in that small group community, and that's certainly helped us in developing the culture and the community here. But what has changed is in that year, the challenging year that we had just come out of, we had really seen a decrease in our ability to serve our international community. And that decrease is incredibly painful for many students who were academically adept and able to handle the rigors of the program, who were interested in pursuing those opportunities here with us, and who added up so much value to sort of the global context of our community. So that's where our rebound has really been seen. So the incoming class this year is rebounded back to the mid 30s. This is 37%. We're typically more around 35%, but 37% international, representing 46 different countries. Much like the folks over at Tepper, we saw countries that we had not seen before. One of the silver linings of the pandemic was that our virtual recruitment can reach folks that we never would have reached otherwise. Yes. And we're incredibly excited to see them become parts of our community and add value. And actually, just this past weekend, we had our, each weekend we have a different type of event that's on campus. And this past weekend, we had an international community event where we brought food together from all the different parts of the world. And it's so lovely to see different flags represented, different communities. Our second years who had yet to truly be participants on campus had an opportunity to see that their community was only growing. And so for that, we're incredibly happy with this incoming class. A few other little notes here is in terms of our GMAT scores fell exactly kind of where we expected them to fall, which is right in that range that we like to see. Same with our GPA. Our class came in at about 291, which is right near the sweet spot for us, and really excited with this community that's on campus. Also really excited that we continue to increase the number of underrepresented in business communities on campus. That's something that we aim to do. We've made a real concerted effort to do starting about 2-3 years ago. We put money behind that. We didn't just say it, we did it. And we're really excited to see that that's really paid through.
I also saw, Eric, that the percentage of students who enrolled with a GRE also increased again. And you're up to something like, I think it's 36%, is it?
I think it's 35 and change, but yeah, we round to 36. It's right around there.
Now, Casey, I'm surprised at how cool, calm, and collected you seem to be. And let me explain why. 6 years ago, Gies launched its disruptive online MBA program with a cohort of something like 113, 116 students. You're now up to over 4,300 enrolled in that program. And through the pandemic, applications went through the roof, and so did admits and those who enrolled in the program. How in the world can you be so cool and calm and collected?
Yeah, it all must be a facade, because there's certainly a million things going on, but we are really excited to see continued growth. As you mentioned, John, 2020 was a crazy year for probably a lot of all of us, right? But in the online world, we did see a huge increase in interest in MBAs. And 2021 we've seen a little bit of a cooling, but back on the trajectory of growth that we had in 2017, 18, and 19. So we have introduced 5 intakes for 2021 as our classes are offered in 8-week sessions, so it provides greater flexibility in when to start. So seen a little bit of smoothing of enrollments over the year, which has been nice for both of our staff and faculty. But we've again seen the growth that we did previous to the pandemic. Between our August and October starts, we have around 800 new students in our IMBA program, and kind of looking to keep on that growth pattern that we've seen in previous years moving forward. Of course, international is a little different for us because we were able to still serve those students through 2020. About 26% of our incoming cohort is international. We have over 90 countries represented throughout the program. I believe it's 46 countries represented just in our fall 2021 cohort.
So I'm curious, how did you scale? Because, those kind of numbers, particularly through the pandemic, would cause people just to get really crazy. How much staff did you have to throw at it to process all those applications and make it happen? It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling for me, and I'm here doing it on a daily basis. We do have new staff hires all the time. The good thing was we had a great e-learning team in place, and we were able to continue to hire in that space and investment from our college as a whole. I think we were one of the only, business schools that was still hiring throughout the pandemic for both staff and faculty. So there's truly been an investment in our programs, which has allowed us to still maintain that quality while we had the continued growth.
Great. And Eric, I want to talk about something you told me before we went on camera, which is that one of the interesting things due to the pandemic was that you actually had a reorientation for your second year MBA students, largely because their first year was remote. Talk us through what happened during the pandemic and what it's like right now.
Sure. So during the pandemic, and I'm actually kind of excited going after Casey on this one, because during the pandemic, what we did is we did a significant investment as well in remote instruction. That included converting 4 of our classrooms into these fully remote classrooms that use a particular type of technology and software that includes up to 80 screens and 7 or 8 different cameras and a couple of multiple layers that were added in. And that's how we delivered our core and most of our elective education through the past year when the pandemic had really limited our ability to have students on campus. We did some on-campus sessions. Those were very limited. Those were always outdoors under tents, taking into account the guidelines here. We're very excited to be back in person and to be a fully in-person community this year. We did not let that technology investment go to waste. John, I know that you were one of the first to hear about this a few months ago, but we did launch a Flex MBA, which was a hybrid model MBA that allows people to begin some of their core coursework remotely, but does have some in-person components. And that's geared towards working professions. But that's where we put that technology. Meanwhile, what we did to those folks who were coming in is we did to exactly the point you mentioned, we did a reorientation, a reconnection to our community. We had, similar to what we would do at our own orientation, we had everybody in together. We talked about the class profile, about who was there, about the community. We broke into smaller groups for them to understand the community and then to understand campus. One of the most beautiful things about Berkeley Haas is where we are, our physical location, nestled into the Berkeley Hills with a view of the San Francisco skyline through the fog. You just turn around the other way and you are surrounded by redwood forests, hiking trails. We wanted to share that beauty with them, and that's a big chunk of what that reorientation is about. Taking folks on hikes, taking advantage of the campus space.
Love it. Jackie, take us through the pandemic and how things have changed. I know you're back to in-person classes as well.
Yeah, so we've resumed in-person experiences. We had them during the pandemic as well. And in terms of safety with our students, requiring masks and frequent testing, faculty and staff as well. So we knew who was on campus and when, and in terms of protecting the students that were here. But now that we're back, everyone has to be vaccinated, faculty, staff, and students, and we are wearing masks. We do have the live instruction again. And it's just great to have that energy here. But during the pandemic, in terms of the instruction, our faculty have been used to this. We've had an online hybrid part-time MBA since 2012. So shifting quickly was not as much of a challenge for us at Tepper. We're quick to move with technology, certainly with Carnegie Mellon, but our faculty have been used to this. Our students in the part-time program continued with their success in this delivery model. And it'll be interesting to see how other MBA programs adapt to in terms of meeting students where they are, hybrid options, online delivery. So it was more of an adjustment, I think, for our full-time students who were socially used to seeing everyone in person, but moving to that quickly online instruction was necessary, certainly. But now that we're here, it's in person with masks on. We can meet outside. There are tents on campus as well. And Pittsburgh's a great community too, as well for our students. It's not a huge city where you're congested and limited to space and personal space, but there are lots of parks and outdoor recreation and places close to where students live to get food, to go out, shopping, places of worship, things like that. So being in Pittsburgh, I think during the pandemic was probably one of the best places that you could be. And I'm glad that our students are here again. and on campus as well. So the pandemic was challenging for everybody, but I think because of the experience we've had with using technology, it was pretty quick for us to move as we needed to.
That's great. Now, I know that every class that's welcomed on a college campus, the new cohort, is a collection of tremendous amounts of effort and grit and perseverance, because all the students who arrived on campus put a lot into the process of getting into your schools. And all of you worked very hard in seriously considering massive numbers of very qualified people, and often having to turn down people you hate to turn down. But I wonder, if you might talk a little bit about crafting that class, in creating or baking that cake. What are the essential ingredients that you see in evaluating talent for your program? Jackie, why don't you start with your ingredients for the tiramisu at Carnegie Mellon?
Oh, it's lunchtime, so talking about food, I could go for a tiramisu right about now. But in terms of a Tepper, we're looking for students that are driven, that are looking to be a part of a smaller community. We're smaller on purpose here at Tepper. So one of the questions that I like to ask during the interview is, how have you helped someone else be successful, an individual or a team? Because it's really important that we're bringing in candidates that want to work in groups, that want to work in teams, that want to improve themselves, but not at the sake of other people. So really understanding, in terms of their experience or their desire, because we know not everyone has had that experience yet to work in teams. They might be individual contributors, but having the transferable skills to work with others, lead others. And at Tepper, we expect you to be a leader. So in your application, hopefully it says something like that in your goals, that you want to lead others. And yeah, so in the application, just reading those essays and getting to understand where they're coming from, the experiences they have professionally and even personally. Our essay is about adversity and overcoming challenge. And I've learned so much about our incoming students, and it's just been a pleasure to really share those stories with us in their MBA application journey. But yeah, I would say, just being thoughtful about working with others, working in teams, being driven, and being humble. That's really something that I value in our alumni community and current students, is that at Tepper, everyone from the dean to working in facilities, we are all here to support each other. We all put our pants on one leg at a time, even from our faculty members like Jay Apt, who is an astronaut in space. We're all here to work together. So in terms of the candidacy, I think really understanding the aspirations and working with other people is something I look for.
Great. And Eric, we know that Haas famously has a set of values that have been well articulated over the years, and that form the core of your culture. I wonder how those values inform your admission decisions.
I love answering that question, John. The reason that I do is because when we talk about the sort of those defining leadership principles here at Berkeley Haas, we often have to first say these are not a rubric. These are not meant for people to come through and tell us this is the number of times I challenge the status quo. These are all the different ways that I go beyond myself. What it does give us is a common language in which to talk about some core fundamental values that we think make up a strong leader, these leadership attributes. And what can candidates do to express that, to share that with us? So one of the key things that we invite people to do is to take a very authentic approach to telling us what drives them. And I'll give you a concrete example in our application. Our application includes an essay, which is our leadership essay. It's the second essay in our application. And it has two parts. And that first part actually says, leadership is changing. It's changed over the last decade and it's changing again. Tell us what you think you need to be a great leader. And the reason that we framed it in that way is because we actually want them to tell us what the objective is. I don't think it's in our place to define leadership or what successful leadership is. We invite people to define that for themselves and then tell us how they're going to achieve that goal. And why it matters so much for us is because if you look at us as an institution, we're made up of folks who are going into technology, who are going into entrepreneurship, who are going into finances. Again, we place so strongly on the West Coast in finance. I think it's kind of our place to dominate when it looks at what internships, when it goes into consulting and all these other spaces. We're not looking for someone to tell us that leadership is one thing. Leadership is a lot of these things. And it's that mindset. It's that mindset that's inclusive, that's innovative, that is mindful of sustainability. Those are those pieces that you can bring forward in an application while not needing to change your target career, job function, or job industry.
Right.
Those are those pieces that we'd like to see co-located in an individual. And we make space for that in the application.
Terrific. Casey, how do you know that an applicant is the right fit for your program?
Yeah, great question, because our approach is a little different because we are offering our MBA online. We don't have some of the physical constraints that a residential program would do. So we really are looking to ensure that you're going to be academically successful, but beyond that, if you're a good fit for the program, we're going to welcome you into our family. So that's one positive of my job, is that I don't have to turn down great applicants because we don't have space for them. So that is one thing, we talk through with applicants, but really determining their fit is something that I'm passionate about and something that we're looking for. If you do prefer to sit in a classroom with 20 individuals, have individualized career counseling, our program probably isn't the right fit for you. But if you thrive in a larger community, in being self-motivated, in developing a large network with a large diverse set of students coming from different industries and different parts of the globe, this can be a great opportunity for you. So we look for those things, in the essay, certainly during the interview. That's a lot of where our assessment of fit comes. We also want to ensure what our program is offering in terms of curriculum and career outcomes and growth is matching what the applicant's looking for. Again, that can be in the paper component of the application, but really plays a role in the interview assessment.
Great. Now Eric, when you get an application, what's the first thing you look for? Is there something that, might be unusual? Maybe, I don't know, you could look at the bottom of the resume and see what hobbies or passions the person has, or do you look at the work experience? What's the first thing that grabs your attention?
The first thing that we look for is a plan. That's actually where we begin. What we want to know is, have you defined for yourself a journey that begins with a set of motivations, inspirations, an idea of a community that you want to serve, and a destination? Where are you going with that? What do you hope to accomplish? You can talk about job function, you can talk about job industry, you can talk about how you're going to make an impact or solve a particular problem. Now, you've given us the beginning and the end. And so what's left to tell us is that middle piece, is what is that narrative arc that gets us there? And so the essays often, for me, is a great place to understand your passions, your motivations, your future goals, what you're hoping to accomplish. And then the rest of the application is the scaffolding. Well, now you've told me the journey, you've told me the story, give me the evidence that shows that you can do this. And in that framework, I'm able to engage with pieces on the resume. With that in mind, I know where you're going now, and now I can see where you've been and how that relates to where you're headed. And so for me, the plan is essential. If you don't have a strong plan that you can communicate clearly in the space in the application, we need to work to discover that. That's not a great starting point.
Okay, there's a big clue to applying to Berkeley's MBA program right there. Jackie, what do you look for? In terms of the first thing you see in either an application or a resume? What's the first thing that grabs your attention?
Yeah, I would look at the history that they've had in terms of their experience, and that the dots connect with their transferable skills to get them to where they want to go and how we can help. I'm looking for opportunities to provide those resources academically outside of the classroom that seem to be strengths that we have with their goals. So really understanding through that resume skills they already have, and maybe they don't even identify with yet, but understanding what's transferable and how we can help them get to where they want to go. Certainly logistically, I'm looking to make sure that the dates match up, that they're following the directions. I think that's one big tidbit I would encourage everyone to follow, is to read the directions of each application, because they're very different. So adding the months in the year and adding all of the positions that they've had. Some candidates forget to include that, and it helps us see progression in title or responsibility that they've had. We want to look to see how they've made an impact in their company or organizations that they've worked in. And I do love seeing at the bottom of the resume or wherever it may be, some of their hobbies and interests. Again, connecting that back to Pittsburgh, if I can, with resources here or opportunities for them to have a full life. It's not just about studying all the time. It's a work-life balance that they have academically and outside of the classroom. So if there's some opportunity or resource that I could provide for them during the interview to help them not only say yes to Tepper, but to say yes here to Pittsburgh as well. So yeah, following directions, sharing your impact with us, and helping me connect the dots for you with resources and experiences at Tepper and Carnegie Mellon.
Other than people who don't follow directions, what would be another common mistake that you see in applications?
I would say not using the optional essay in an appropriate way. That is an opportunity to really share some insight about things that might be glaring in your application academically or professionally, to help us have an inside, information about what was going on during that time. So whether it's a bad semester academically in college, or changing your major, or a family or personal health history, or a gap in your resume. Maybe there was an acquisition of your company or a downsizing that we wouldn't know just by looking at those materials. So using the optional essay, it's really precious landscape there for you to utilize. So using that appropriately is the best thing that I would encourage students to think about using, and not just a place to reiterate your interest in the school. We've gotten that through other opportunities in the application or an interview. So not using it in that way, but for places that make sense.
Yeah, good point there. Add value in every little corner of your application. Don't be redundant, repeating what is already on your resume. You already have that information. You don't want it again. That's a wasted opportunity. That's good advice. Eric, what are the common mistakes that you see made in applications?
I would have to say, when it comes to the letters of recommendation, the idea that those are outside of your control is something that I don't necessarily align with. I think whom you select, the way in which you prepare your recommenders, when you reach out to them to let them know. The strongest letters of recommendation are recommendations that come through from an individual that has expressed to their recommender what their future goals are, so that recommender can tie specific circumstances as a supervisor, as someone with perspective on their work, to be able to say, and these are the pieces that I think are relevant given their future goal that they've now expressed to us. So I encourage folks to think about their recommenders early, to cultivate those recommenders, to share their future goals, to remind them of the strengths or projects that they've worked on, so that those recommenders can give us full and robust responses that are useful and add value to the application. It's the only place that we're going to get an outside voice in your application, and we'd love for you to help that person make sure that they're speaking to what you want them to speak to. We draw the line in inviting them to, don't give them a draft, don't write it for them. That we can tell, we've seen it and we can tell, but certainly work with your recommenders to help them bring out the best in what they can share about you.
Yeah, I mean, a nitty-gritty detail in a recommendation letter that shows how close the relationship is between the recommender and the potential student, I think is really important. And you can only get that if there's a real relationship, which is the other piece of advice I'm sure you would offer. Don't be picking a recommender because they graduated from Haas or they worked in the White House. Pick someone who knows you well, who can truly comment on what your contribution can be. That's always a good piece of advice to follow.
I absolutely agree with that, John. I don't know how many times we've seen a letter from the CEO or the CFO that has no real content in it.
Yeah, totally. So Casey, do you see mistakes in applications as well?
Oh, unfortunately we do. And the biggest mistake though is just not tailoring their application to what we're requesting. So I don't want to read quotes from our website, but I do want to know that you've done some research into our program and aligned your goals with the things that we're offering. And I think too often we see qualified applicants that just haven't put the time and effort that's required into the application process. It appears very generic and generalized. So make sure you're taking the time customizing your application. Of course, your personal statement, honestly, I've seen personal statements that list someone else's school and or a different program here at the University of Illinois. And so we have to address that. But also parts of your resume, like how can you customize that to your graduate school education? And then back to what Jackie said too, identify areas of weakness and talk about them, how you progressed from that. The optional essay is a great place to do that. Even identifying weaknesses in your personal statement is perfectly okay. I think everyone pursuing education has identified they have some weakness, right? That's why they need to fill that gap. We want to hear how great you are, but we also want to hear about why you're pursuing the program. So make sure that's coming forward in your application as well.
Yeah, it's often hard for an applicant to be vulnerable that way and mention their weaknesses. And yet that kind of honesty, reflects someone who is comfortable with who they are. They come across as genuine candidates. And I think in general, it serves them well. But wouldn't you say that most candidates are a little bit wary of putting front and center a real vulnerability, a failure in their life?
They are, but I think as long as you can talk about how that failure, it transcended into something else, we really see that as a strength. One of the biggest things I look for on an application is progression, right? So maybe you had a really poor first semester of undergrad. Okay, what did you do since then? Maybe you started in a very entry-level position. Maybe that industry wasn't the right fit for you. Again, those are all, we're going to see those things. So if you can address them and kind of be on top of them early on, that's going to be really helpful for us and probably eliminate some uncomfortable conversations in the interview process. We can then focus more on the positive things in the interview rather than addressing any questions that we had from your written application.
Right. And Eric, at every school, and Casey just mentioned this, at Gies, a core part of that journey to get in is the interview. And that can be a very anxiety-producing exercise. At your school, if you get to the point where you're actually invited to interview, you're elated, but at the same time, there is this one other hurdle that you have to pass. What's the interview process like at Haas? And what can people expect from it? What are you looking for in that interview?
So that's a great question, because the answer hopefully will help alleviate some of that anxiety. Our interview questions are structured in a very simple format, which I'll give to everybody right now. There's no secret sauce here. We're going to ask you for a specific example that's related to a prompt, and then we're going to ask you to tell us what you learned. And so if you've got some examples in your life of specific instances, that look at your professional journey, look at your personal journey, pull together examples that reflect on, and I'm going to go back to what you were just talking about, areas of growth, opportunities where you didn't know it the first time, but you figured it out the second time. Spaces where you were confronted with something that you didn't know how to deal with, but you learned from it. And that's the structure. And what I hope alleviates some of that concern is the way in which we invite you to share that with us. So you asked for the process. Our process is you will be invited to interview by our team only after we've read your application at least twice. We have a sense that you're someone that we want to join us here. The interview will not sink anyone. It is a positive. It can float your application higher, but this is not something that can, we got the interview and now all of a sudden those two initial reviews are not valid. That's not how that works. It's a plus. It's an also that can help raise folks up, but it should never be seen in that way. And that invitation will invite you to either choose a format that best suits you. And we have pre-recorded interviews. If you're the kind of person that gets nervous talking to another individual, especially over camera, especially with noises in the background, give yourself this opportunity to take advantage of a pre-recorded interview. It's coming from us. We're going to deliver the exact same style of questions through a question bank and a system. And then you've got time to answer, to prepare that answer and answer in a way that you don't necessarily have when it's live. When it's live, you feel this pressure to immediately respond. 1, 2, 3, answer. But instead, we give these 30-second pauses to think, prepare a response, and then deliver that response recorded. But if you want to pursue one of the live interviews, which this year and the past year are delivered remotely. So we've got members of our staff, members of our alumni community, current students participating in this interview process. You schedule a time with a real person, schedule it via a virtual connection, and then you're talking to a person. And there's if that's where your energy comes from, then you got that option as well. So I'm going to say, well, how are you doing today? And what's the weather in your region of the world? Okay, great. Let's talk about an example. Let's talk about a question. We've given folks the opportunity to choose the format that best suits them. And I'm telling you what the secret is here. It's example and what'd you learn? So if you've got a couple of examples that you've learned from, then you're probably already prepared.
Yeah, that's a simple, easy formula to follow. Although I think people get nervous and they can screw up. So, knowing that, though, you're right. I think relieves a lot of anxiety for sure. Jackie, what's the process like at Carnegie Mellon? The interview process?
Yeah, so it's a blind interview process, and we invite candidates to interview similarly to Haas after we've read and processed their applications. And we invite candidates throughout the entire round. So sometimes candidates are nervous that they didn't get invited right away. We have a lean team. We're doing the best we can, and we have more applications than ever. So if you interview in the beginning of our round, great. If you interview later and you're invited then, that's fantastic. I've interviewed candidates days before decisions went out and they were admitted. But it's a blind process. So the person who's interviewing with you is a member of the admissions team, has not read your application. To eliminate bias and to help students have exposure to more people on the team, it gives them an opportunity to chat with someone that they haven't met before, possibly. But it's very behavioral based, like Haas. We're asking for examples of experiences that you've had around leadership, challenge, working with people from different cultures or backgrounds. We want to know more about you and your personality and what you like to do for fun, but also how Tepper is a good fit for you. What research have you done? How have you identified how this school is going to help you get to where you want to go? But we do have a demystifying the interview process available on our website that students can register for. We don't want it to be a secret. We want you to do well. And I actually really enjoy it. It's a great time to learn stories about people's experiences. But understand that it's 30 minutes and it goes by very quickly. So practice your star stories. Have someone help you, ask you those questions, and be comfortable. It's not just about submitting your application and then letting go, but really being ready for when we do invite you to interview to take that next step with us in your process.
Great. Okay, so I just filed a fantastic application. You just invited me to interview. Now you made a decision on me and I'm admitted and I'm elated. Can I get any scholarship help from Carnegie Mellon?
That's certainly a great question. Hopefully they've had that conversation with us before they even applied, because it is a merit-based process. And so we look at all of the components in your application, including your interview, your academic experience, your professional experience, and we try to award those scholarships at the time of admission. So it's not a surprise to them what money that they're getting from the Tepper School of Business. But again, the interview can really be a great place to show your strengths, your knowledge of the school, and how it's a good fit for you. So don't sleep on your interview preparation after you submit your application, because it can be a part of your scholarship consideration.
And Eric, I'm assuming that you also have some scholarship assistance available?
We have tons of opportunities to explore that. So let's talk a little bit about them, because we have a wide range of opportunities. They include, much like Jackie and the team over at Tepper, merit-based scholarships that are going to be based on your academic indicators at the time you apply, as well as exceptional professional journeys, exceptional personal journeys. Those are incorporated into that review process. We also offer scholarships through the consortium if you are applying through that program. On top of that, we have a number of fellowships that are available. They're available on our website. You can apply for them before you're even admitted. so that our financial aid team has an opportunity to look at that. They won't get back to you until after you're admitted, but they do give you the opportunity to get some information in front of us. We often encourage folks to complete the application, submit it, take a minute, relax, reward yourself, come back in, take a look at the scholarship applications. See what fellowships might apply to your journey and what you're hoping to accomplish. Give us that information, give us an opportunity to support you further. On top of that, we also offer need-based aid. Now, we don't require you to submit a form that you filled out elsewhere. We don't require you to pay to complete a form to then share that form to show us that you have need. We think that there's something broken with that process of needing to pay to show that you can afford. But we offer need-based aid, and that need-based aid has a number of different calculations involved. It's not tied to the FAFSA here in the US. It does not have to be a domestic student. We offer need-based aid to international students. We do so by taking into account fluctuations in currencies. We've got a financial aid team, again, here in the business school that's robust, that's focused on these types of supports. And so there's a number of different ways to be supported when coming through the program.
Yeah, that's great, Eric. And Casey, I know there is no scholarship aid for the IMBA because it is disruptively priced, right?
We actually do have some scholarship opportunities now. They're limited in number, but they are of high value. So we partner with Porte. I'm sure several other schools have that opportunity, but that's for each intake. We do have one female candidate that receives a $20,000 scholarship. Our program in total is around $22,000, so significant assistance there. And then with the assistance of our partner Coursera, we are now offering some 70% scholarships, really with the behind our efforts in diversity, inclusion, and equity. So those are the goal of those scholarships. We're reviewing the candidate's application as a whole, but also an optional scholarship essay that they submit are the basis for those decisions. So it can certainly make a break for whether students are able to attend.
And that's all based on need, right? Not merit.
Yes, more so need, and then again the access worldwide. But merit does take into consideration, but more so on the need.
Now, you mentioned earlier, you look for people who thrive in a large environment, who are self-motivated for your program. Are there any other, personality fits for your program that you look for? Any other demands?
Yeah, I think as many have expressed, and being a good team member, there's a group component of all of our classes, and when we're working with working professionals that have other commitments as well outside of school, that's a huge component. So how you can talk about that, how you can ensure that that comes across in your essay or your interview. Once again, being that good team member. Working with a diverse population of students is important. And then the last thing that I would say that's a little harder to assess, but something that we're looking for is we don't require the GMAT or GRE. So of course that quantitative skill always comes into question. And if that's not your strength based on your academic or professional background, that's okay, but how can you show us your willingness to learn and your capacity to learn in some of those more challenging quantitative courses? That's something that we're looking for as well. So if you can express that at some point in your application, that's always beneficial to our team as well.
Great. Eric, you convinced me I want to go to Haas. So tell me what I should be doing now.
So what should you be doing now? It's a very good question. So I want to use this opportunity to talk about the types of backgrounds folks can come from, because I don't want you to think you have to do one thing. So one of the things I really love, take a look at our class profile. And when you look at the undergraduate experiences or the professional experiences, the pie chart looks like a color wheel. It's got a lot of really large segments, and that's valuable. We don't want you to be doing one thing. We want you to be doing the thing that gets you further towards your goal. So how might you go about doing that? You might go about doing that by leaning into the backgrounds that you have and looking towards what those future goals are. I heard earlier one of my colleagues here on the panel talk about those relatable and transferable skills. Well, this is your opportunity to prove that those are transferable. right? To actually start to begin the journey towards that future goal. So coming from any of those backgrounds, coming from any of those educations, you have the opportunity to begin to say, well, this is how this relates to what my future goal is. Take the first 2 steps before you get here, and we know that you're on the path.
All right, great. Jackie, I know I want to go to Pittsburgh. Tell me what I should be doing right now.
Yes. Well, I would love to talk your ear off about Pittsburgh. I've lived here for over 17 years. I'm not originally from here, but love the quality of life that's available for our students. But for an incoming student, I would say, get to know your other admitted peers, get to know the students that are in the program, because the quality of your relationships are going to help you not only in the richness of life, but being curious about their backgrounds, their strengths, their skills will help you when you need help. And we know that you're going to need help at some point, academically or maybe even personally. So the quicker you get to know the people that are here, that are going to be in your network, the easier it's going to be to ask those people for help instead of waiting and taking too long. So get to know the people that you're going to be studying with and living with and learning with, the people that are here in the program already, and talk to your admissions officers. We're here to provide resources for you. It's not just about getting in and then seeing you later, and moving on to the next round. We are here to support you and answer your questions about living here, moving here, resources here for you, your family, or others that you're bringing with you. And we know the students here, we know the alumni. So if you have questions about a particular industry or company, I'm happy to introduce you to an alum or other resources here. So stay in touch with us, but get to know your peers. We have a lot of admitted student events, admitted student website, webinars, conferences over the summer. So there's a lot of resources that are going to be coming your way, and we're here to help you.
Great. Now, Casey, I don't want to quit my job. I want to get an MBA. I want to come to your program. What advice do you have for me right now?
Yeah, I think it's really just echoing what everyone else said. Whether you're in the application process or consideration process, or you've been admitted, get to know current students, get to know fellow incoming students, get to know our staff. We're really not that scary, and we really do want to help you. So ask those questions, attend the events, just be interactive and be engaged. And that's really, truly the best advice that I can give. If there's a second piece, I would say take advantage of optional onboarding or those prep stat courses, things like that, while you still have time. It'll help you get back into the school mode, and also just feel prepared, because I know particularly for our students, that first semester can feel a little overwhelming. They've been out of school, they're working, etc. The more work you can do in advance, the better you're going to be starting out your program.
Great. There's that old cliche about how to buy a car. You kick the tires. And in an MBA program, what you do to kick the tires is you talk to current students, you talk to alumni. And in this day, where the pandemic is still lingering, you may still not be able to visit campus, or you might be able to. But through those conversations with the students and the alumni, you're going to at least vicariously visit and get a sense for what it's all about. And that's going to be really helpful. So, hey, what a pleasure it's been to spend this last 50 minutes or so with each of you. Thank you so much for your participation and for offering such smart and thoughtful views. Your passion comes through for your programs. I love it. And I'm really appreciative of the time you spent here. So thank you, Eric, Jackie, and Casey. Always a pleasure. And for all of you out there, thanks for watching. We'll be back in a little bit with another session. And if you saw part of this and want to see all of it, we'll be on demand, and you can watch it anytime at your leisure. You can even binge watch it like a Netflix series. Imagine that. All right. Hey, thank you. This is John Bird with Poets and Quants.